Welcome to today's show. Shane, I'm excited for the conversation we're about to have today. But before we dive into that, we have to address the elephant in the room, which is...
Yeah, we look exactly the same as we did before, and I think it's because, honestly, the calendar, it goes right to today's topic, right, which is managing your calendar. And what happened was we fell behind on our calendar, and with ice and snow and Christmas, a month ago, and didn't get our podcast recorded ahead of time, and now here we are having to record 2 podcasts in one day. And it's really a function of what's today's topic? Your calendar is a crime scene?
Yeah, right. Your calendar runs your life, and it is, and we got run by our calendar, right? It was one of those things. We had things in the calendar, and then there was just life happened, and and all of a sudden, so yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Any of these things life is always going to happen, right? Life, it's whether that's you're sick, whether a family member, your kid has a surprise hockey thing that you didn't put on your calendar, or all these things control, or you move, right? I mean, you just moved this last year, and all of that, your calendar life is going to happen. And running a law firm, stuff is going to happen. You're going to have some crises and some urgency that pops in, something that comes in that's got to be done today, or at least you feel like it's got to be done today.
Yep.
And so if your calendar, and this comes to it, if your calendar is super packed and tight and you don't have rules and stuff, it's just chaos. I mean, it's it leads to stress and anxiety and worry.
The calendar should be a tool. And I know, a lot of you guys are probably you're like, calendar, really? You're going to have a whole show on calendar? Yes, we're going to have a whole show on calendar. Because here's the reality. If you were good at it and it wasn't a problem, if I was good at it, then we wouldn't need to have this conversation. But I can promise you, most of you suck at your calendar. It's just, we all do. It's like it allows, and you end up having things, quote unquote, in your calendar that I consider reactive. They're not strategic, right? We don't plan. We don't map out, hey, here's what I need here's my target for the week, and here's what I need inserted into my calendar so that I'm effective in moving forward. What ends up happening is, intake has a problem, and so then that ends up on your calendar. And then, demands has a problem, and that ends up on your calendar. And then you've got an accounting issue, and that ends up on your calendar. And you get through the entire week, and what you realize is you literally that calendar controlled you completely. You actually had no control, and you start to feel, this happened to me, you start to feel like this stupid calendar sitting on your computer it's like your master.
The boss of you, right?
Yes. And you're like, I'm in charge, but somehow. And then if you're not careful, other people will have access to your calendar that put shit on your calendar that makes it even worse. So now you have things on your calendar you don't want to do, but you've given them with maybe not enough training or whatever it is, but now they're putting things on the calendar that they shouldn't be putting on the calendar. And so the calendar can become like this weird, almost deity.
Oh yeah. Well,
in your life.
And I, for a lot of people, they're totally reactive, right? And I one time had this phase where I did the total reverse. I was like, no, I hate wasted time. I told my admin, I want everything scheduled. I want it super tight. I don't want to waste anything, right? Well, what happens then is one meeting runs a little long.
Yep.
So now you've got no flex time in it. You've got no prep time. You roll right into the next meeting. And I was meeting. My calendar was so dang tight. I had no time for anything. Half the time I was missing lunches, and I actually didn't have any. It was reactive, but it was scheduled reactivity, so I had no time to actually work on the business because everything was so tight. I was probably pretty close to puppet mastering, which is what last week's topic was about. Is I didn't delegate enough outcomes, and I was the final decision maker on too many things, and my calendar was just like you say, it ruled my life, but not in a positive way. It was. So terrible, and then you're tired and exhausted, and since you've got a full day tomorrow, if work's not done at 5:00, guess what? That means you're still working.
Yep.
Because you got to get it done because tomorrow's a full day too.
Yeah, it's not like you can push it, right? I really learned this lesson. It was watching somebody else. It wasn't even through my own experience, but it was a client I was working with, and they were a COO of a very, very decently sized company, did about $500 million a year. So pretty big company, COO, and this guy on his calendar, it was blocked off from 2 to 4, Monday through Friday, where there was no access to him. Didn't matter what was going on. Like, you couldn't communicate with him. You couldn't interrupt him. You couldn't, there was nothing. You just didn't have access to him. Now, it's not like he disappeared. He was still in the office. His door was closed, and he had to basically there's several things I learned from watching what he did. Number one is he trained his people. They knew that with his calendar from 2 to 4, there just was no point. Don't send an email. Don't send a Slack message. Don't try to call. None of those things. You're not getting through. I don't care if the world is burning down around him. He's not going to. So he made this hard, fast rule so that he couldn't be interrupted. And they knew that, number one. But that was the first one, was training your people. I was like, okay, so it's a little more complicated than just putting it on your calendar, because you got to put it on your calendar, and then you actually have to let all the people that would have access understand that, and you've got to actually follow through. Yep. Right? So that was the other part that I watched, because obviously with a company that does that volume, you can imagine, especially if he's the executive operator, right, the COO, he probably has a few things that he's responsible for.
Yep. Could be
most
couple,
likely.
Right?
It's just one or two, right? And inside of that, he still honored his own calendar. So he honored it. And here was the craziest part. You know what he did from 2 to 4? 2 to 4. You guys would be like, probably some crazy. No, he did nothing.
Yeah.
Literally nothing. That was what he did. He set that time apart, and the nothing he did was thinking. It was mapping things out. It was planning. It was being strategic. It was doing all the things that we talk about here at the Legal Edge on what you need to do in order to grow and scale, to make sure that when you actually go and strategically strike and you actually take action on the things that you know you need to take action on, that it's the right thing. And so I looked at that, and then it was funny because I'm sitting there on a call with this guy, and he's kind of walking me through his process, and then I'm watching him do it over the months. So we work together, and then I'm sitting there looking at myself, and I'm like embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, I don't do that. I'm nowhere near that good with what I was doing with my calendar. Like the calendar, I realized it exposed how the calendar was completely controlling me, and how I allowed interruptions throughout the day. And that was the big thing for me, which is one of those things you have to identify, that when you set a calendar, you create this calendar, and then when people have the ability to interrupt you whenever they want, or clients have the ability to interrupt you whenever you want, right? If you've got this, you're on this structured, hey, this is when I'm working on project A, but then you get pinged from your admin, hey, client Steve is on the phone, blah, 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 blah. Instead of realizing that hey, you're in the middle of this task that was on the calendar. Calendar goes out the window, and now all of a sudden you're on the phone with client Steve. 30, 45 minutes, an hour goes by there, and now all of a sudden you come back to the calendar. You're so far behind that this is why we say the calendar looks like a crime scene, because it's all over the place. It's like the biggest mess. It looks like a huge car wreck happened, and there's just everything going all over the place, and it's a lot of it. I hate it. I hate to say this because it's so simple, but it literally is the stupid age-old time blocking. Can you time block and put things where they need to go? But talk to me about this, Shane, because I think this is where I got messed up. I've watched other attorneys get messed up here big time. And it's if you create a time calendar, but then you have all these demands coming at you, right? You have team, you have clients, you have all of this. How do you get to where that's not a problem, where you can actually honor the calendar, and it's a clean, simple process, as opposed to, when client Steve calls that I need to talk to you right now, and all these things. Like how did you start doing that? Because I know your calendar's pretty solid, right? Yeah. You do a great job with it now, but I'm confident that wasn't always that way.
It wasn't always the case by any stretch, right? And I did. I think the first big move is I figured out there is some value in meetings, right? And I talked about, as a lawyer, you can't delegate some things, right? Like my staff can't negotiate without my authority, right? And without the client authority. So, but I figured out that I could give my team guidance on what I needed to see, and then I could have a meeting that took 15 minutes, and I could hammer through it and give them tasks that they would go from. And then since they knew, and this is a meeting I did 3 days a week, right? I mean, I did it 3 days a week at 1:00 with my team, and she would bring in, she knew there was no need for problems to interrupt me, because she had a meeting tomorrow or today about that negotiation issue. So that allowed her not to interrupt me. But then also small, silly things like, as a lawyer, you got to write demands, right? So you get all the medical bills and records, you got to write the demands. Well, some lawyers will actually, the staff will interrupt them and say, hey, here's a demand. Susie's demand needs to go out go out. Well, there's no need for that interruption. And it doesn't take a lot of thought to switch back to your task, but it is an interruption. And some of the studies say it takes, 15 minutes to get into a complex task? So my staff would just come in and put it on the shelf, right? And I knew new demands were on the shelf. New negotiation files I need to work on were on the shelf, so I didn't have to be interrupted to deal with them. So scheduling the meetings frequently enough and short enough, I can give guidance so the team knows no need to interrupt me there.
Yep. Well, dude, I love what you're saying because you're basically talking about scheduling the interruption.
Yeah.
Because it's whatever they're bringing to you is going to be an interruption, but instead of them doing it at 9 on a Monday and 2 o'clock on a Tuesday and whatever, right, randomly, it's scheduling it.
Yeah.
You know the interruptions are coming, and so when you schedule it, then they know, and you train your team to know that, hey, there's this problem. I bring it to Shane, my meeting on Wednesday. And then all of a sudden you're in this loop where you're not interrupted off of the simple tasks themselves.
And what I see is new lawyers in particular, they will on this issue, right? They're trying to do this technique, and so they'll say, well, once a week we're going to have this meeting and we're going to deal with all your issues, and that meeting ends up lasting an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah. So it's a disaster because there's so much stuff. It happens infrequently enough that the staff still has pressure to interrupt you and give you stuff later on. They also get a ton of homework to do, too much homework, and you're tired and it's exhausting and you start to dread it. So I see they do that once a week, whereas if they did 3 15-minute meetings, it'd be so much better, right? So that's one way, because then the staff knows there's no need to hold anything. Because when you do once a week, that's infrequent enough in the legal field that there's still emergencies they're going to interrupt you from. All the time.
And depending on, and I did this not with obviously everyone that worked for me, but like the strategic people, I would have just a quick morning stand up with those and just find, okay, what do we got? What do we got? What do you have? What's in there? Just basically finding out, are there going to be any interruptions today? Anything that I'm going to need to focus on that's outside of what would be normal? And if not, or we just make sure we're all clear on where it is we need to go. But then that allows us, is when you have that type of a cadence, whether it's every day, every 3 days, like you have that little check-in moment, it allows you the pressure off of the immediate, oh my gosh, this is a red fire, all alarms fire, 5-alarm fire, whatever they call it, and we got to go now.
And what's amazing too is if they know, if it happens at noon and they know they're going to see it tomorrow at 9. A lot of times they'll actually solve the issue, or the urgency goes away, or it's no longer nearly as big a deal as it felt like it was at 1:15.
Correct.
Right in the afternoon. So tomorrow it's like, oh, we got this issue, but they've already solved it, or they've already got 2 plans. Versus if they can come see it at 1 o'clock, they didn't solve the issue; they just dumped it on your desk.
Yep, they expected you. Again, back to what we were talking about last week, right? That you still end up being the decision maker. You still being the one that needs your hand in it. And you've trained your people this way, right? And this, utilizing the schedule and the calendar as a way you can actually train them out of that, right? And by honoring it and looking at it. And even looking, I think there's an important thing I want to address here when it comes to calendar, which is, there's a difference. You hear it, it's a buzzword, and it's kind of an annoying buzzword, kind of like time blocking, because everyone knows it, but it's like it actually matters. That's why we talk about it. But this other buzzword is looking at the difference of working in your business versus on your business, right? We call that ownership time versus operator time. If you're not careful and you're not strategic with your scheduling, all of your time will be wrapped up into the in your business scheduling. All of it will be that way, and you don't actually schedule realistic time to actually work on your business and to start. And those are the growth type things that I'm talking about, whether we've been talking about since we began the podcast.
And that's why sometimes it's so good to come to like a weekend surrounded by other lawyers who are working on their business, right? Because you're not doing any legal briefs that weekend. You're working on it, you're doing it. I used to love it because I would, all during the travel to the event, I'd be thinking about my business. Then you go to the event, and then you travel back, you're thinking about it as well, right? Or I would get working on your business in the car, right? And and whether I was driving or somebody else was driving, I could work on my business, and I'd have great ideas and thoughts. For a while, I was dangerously close to having a guy pick me up, drive me 2 hours to go eat lunch, and then drive me 2 hours back, merely so I could get out of the office and work on the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tough, well, dude, and you've got to create that. And what I think is it doesn't have to, like, those events are amazing. Don't get me wrong, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. But you don't need to wait for some big experience.
No, and you should.
Yeah, no, because I think that's what people do, though. That's what I used to do. It was like I would grind. My face is down. I'm in the thing, and then that's right. I've got my 2-day event. Great, now I can pull back. But I just wasted 90 days of doing nothing but working in the weeds, and I never actually built anything. And so then when I get to the planning and the working on the business stuff, I realized I wasn't even moving.
Well, and that's the problem, right? Is especially when you get sucked into the business all the time, doing everything, and you don't do anything, you don't implement, you don't even think. Which is why you've got to get it scheduled on your calendar at some point in time, right? To work on a problem.
Yep. And I would dare say, and this is other people may disagree with me, I don't know, but it's no different than learning a musical instrument. It's better to work on if I were to learn a piano, it's better to work on the piano for 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week, than it is to play on Saturday for an hour.
I would
right?
100% agree, yeah.
And so I think looking at this with this working, two things here: create the habit that you can put a calendar time into, puts a time slot on your calendar that you're working on the business. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, whatever it is, pick that time, right? 10 minutes is probably not very much. I'd probably go a little bit more than that, but maybe a half hour, at least a half hour. So you're in this half hour and you're going to work on growth and expansion, big vision. This is working on the bigger plan, right? And doing that every single day. You've developed the habit. Plus, you're going to be able to build the momentum of you being the guy who works on the firm, and you're not just always stuck inside of the weeds itself. That transition, and here's what I'll tell you: guys that I've watched and gals that I've watched make this an attempt, I would say more so attempt to make this. What ends up happening is there's times where you'll sit there and you're not exactly sure what to do, because it's not a skill set that you have yet. No different than I sit down in front of a piano and like somebody puts some sheet music up in front of me and I'm like, I don't know how to play that. So you kind of just stare at it and maybe you pluck away at a key or two. But same thing will happen when you're transitioning your mindset and really transitioning your calendar to be able to work on the business. You might sit there and be like, well, I don't know what does that mean, work on the business? Like, okay, well, I guess I'll just think. And you'll feel like it's unproductive. You'll feel like you're not making moves. This is where I'll just challenge you to test me on this. Don't trust me, test me. You got to do it for an extended period of time. And I'm talking not just days, I'm talking weeks and months, in order to get the cadence to where you're actually pretty good at it and you actually know how to do it. And you'll start really gaining and driving momentum to actually work on the bigger problems that are keeping you stuck, inside of that. And so that has to be a part of it. And it's a simple thing, right? It's a simple thing to do. And it really comes, if you look at really what scaling is, scaling's actually boring. And the easiest way to make your life boring, I know this sounds weird, but to make it boring is to structure your weeks pretty much the same.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
A variable schedule, it's exciting, right? There's lots going on. You don't get bored throughout the day and you're doing
There's a forest fire.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, forest fires are not helpful, right?
No.
That's destructive. Those are not productive. And so really looking at you want it to be boring and structured and weekly, the same every single week. And
I when you talk about, you might sit there and say, what am I doing? Right? Like for a while I would have a starter list, right? Like I would have a list in Excel or on a notebook of things that were broken that I wanted to work on, right? And like the first day, it was sitting around thinking about all the things I like better at the firm, right? And broken doesn't necessarily mean it's not working, but something I would want better, right? In some process. And I would just have a list so that sometimes I would sit there and I'd be like, what do I need to work on today? I just pull up the list and I'd be like, oh, well, these are 3 things I said were important. Let me work on one of these.
Yep.
And then a lot of times you don't solve it in 20 minutes or 30 minutes. If it was an easy problem, you'd already solved it, right? So You got to work on it, and then you got to come back to it, and you got to come back to it, and finally you're done. But it takes time. I mean, like you say, don't expect to be a genius at it on day one.
No.
If it was easy to grow a business, everybody would have a $10 million business, right?
Yep.
I mean,
yeah, it would, and it's not easy, and it's tough. I mean, I had a client that we were supposed to have a call last night, and he texted me about an hour before and gives me this sob story about what's happening and blah, 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 blah. And that, can we reschedule? And all this chaos has happened to him. And one of the things I've been working on with him is this very idea, right? Is that like, dude, you have got to get control of your day. Just no matter what, it doesn't matter. I don't think he's just made of lighter fluid, but it always seems like he's just always on fire, no matter what. And it's a different thing all the time. And he's starting to see it, but it's so interesting because I watch him. He's a great guy. He's productive. His firm's doing well, but it's consuming him because fire consumes, right? So it's like if he doesn't figure this out and he's not able to get down here. So the process of getting there, he's 100 times better than he was a year ago, but he still finds himself back in those patterns. And what ends up happening is if I were to point to everything we're talking about today, he lets these things go. All of a sudden, people start having control over him. His structured week goes to unstructured. He allows the environment to totally control and consume him.
And one technique, and you and I have talked about this, is your generals 10 on Sunday nights, right? Start planning your week, your big target, your big to-dos, and for a while, I would plan everything on Sunday night, right? Mm-hmm. Even though I was running a law firm, and this is probably when we were like $12 million in revenue, right? So clearly, bigger firm. But I would have my main thing I wanted to get done, and then I have like 4 tasks every day, right? Boom. And what I realized is that didn't work great for me because I always had some little fires, right? And not fires that would pull me out of everything, but if I've got my whole day mapped out and some new issue comes up, I've got no wiggle room to do with anything, which means what? I've either got to sacrifice something else, break my calendar, postpone something, cancel something, or work late, right? Which I didn't want to do any of those. So for me, like when I was working on my general's tent, planning out the week, I got my big thing I want to do. But I might each day only plan, if I'm trying to get 4 hits, right, which is one of the things we talk about, I would only plan 2 or 3. Yep. So I always left an open one for that sort of crisis that needed to come in, because then it wasn't a crisis. If I have an hour and I got to deal with something, I just slide it in there, and I've got an hour tomorrow. So I could just say, no, I'll do it tomorrow and slide it right in, and now it's not a crisis. It calms your team down because it gets that fire under control. And that's what you say is those people who are on fire all the time, I firmly believe it's you've allowed your life to get that way. Yes. Right? Because it happens to them 100%. Over and over and over and over. And if you talk to them, they're like, I don't like the chaos. And it's like, then why do you keep doing it?
Yes. Which is so wild because there's things in your world right now that you don't like. Right, you go back to your firm and you look at your firm and you're like, I don't like this, I don't like this, but you created it. It's your firm.
It's my firm.
And you have the ability to switch them, which is we forget that. We get consumed, we get locked into it. But here's this novel idea you're talking about, Shane, is schedule your fire time. Right? It's what you mean you can schedule chaos? Yeah.
You can schedule chaos. You can schedule. I went through a phase where I got to where I couldn't seem to work because I was interrupted by a bunch of clients, right? Clients that wanted to talk to me, clients I needed to talk to. So I just scheduled, I scheduled client time. And a lot of people, they'll schedule each client a 20-minute block, right? I don't recommend that approach because for me, what would happen is one client would take 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. One would take 10. So if the one took 10, now I've got a 10-minute gap. What the heck am I supposed to do there? Yep. Or one would take 30, and then I'm behind. And the dude I'm supposed to talk to at 1:30, it's now 1:40, and he's antsy. Or, just whatever issues. So what I did is I told my team, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, from 2 o'clock on, I will talk to anybody I need to talk to. Right? I tell you I need to talk to, whoever calls in, whoever you say I need to talk to, y'all just work the list. Yep. And I just had them make phone calls. They get people on the phone. They would transfer them over to me, tell me what the issue is. I'd take 2 minutes to brief it. and then I'd go and roll into it. And I would talk to people back to back to back. And my team, but I had to honor the commitment too, because they would stack those client calls and they would tell clients, Shane will call you before he leaves the office.
Mm-hmm.
Which meant some days I was done at 4, other days I was done at 6.
Yep.
But I'd scheduled all those client calls in so that I didn't get random calls throughout the day, right? I didn't get, or interruptions over and over and over. And so,
but it's crazy. I literally just yesterday, I was working with one of your attorneys, and this was pretty much what we had gotten. This was the conclusion with her of, hey, this is what you need to do. And it was certain calls that she needed to make. And it was like, well, what if you just scheduled those in every day and you did them every day? Because you did it in the past and it got you ready, for your big event, and you were ahead of schedule. So why don't you just keep doing that? And that's exactly what she did. She's like, well, I'm just going to put it on my calendar and I'm going to make those calls at this time and I'll do it every single day, which allows me to stay on top of it. Because most of the time, for example, her and other people that I've worked with plenty, and you listening, your fires usually come because you don't have a good process of how to, like,
exactly.
you don't put them, like, they shouldn't even be fires. They only become fires because you didn't actually do what you needed to do when you needed to do it, i.e. what you're talking about, Shane, having those conversations with the clients and setting that time block out. You push somebody off 2-3 days, now all of a sudden it's a fire. Now all of a sudden they're,
too, right?
oh, yeah, now they're going to I'm going to fire you. We're going to go with another attorney, blah, 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 all this stuff. And you're like, shit.
And what's so crazy about it is, we would block those people off. I never really had anybody get mad because I'm doing it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So the longest you're waiting is maybe you called Friday afternoon and you're scheduled for Tuesday, right? Which, if you've got one day, also your team, if it was a real issue, could plug one call in. It's not a habit, but it's still just waiting 2 days. And if you're worried about that, do one on Monday, then do Wednesday, Thursday. So there's never more than a day. And my team would tell people, and people would call in and say, oh, dude, I missed Shane when he called. They'd be like, okay, I'll put you back on today's list. So he's going to call you. But if you miss, but people would be trained. You're down on the list. It's probably going to be like somewhere around 3 o'clock. Watch for his call. 4 o'clock. Watch for his call. So actually, I found that clients actually respected me more.
Yes.
Because I called them when I told them I was going to call. When I had them, I gave them my full attention. And they felt like I was busy enough. So it made me a professional versus somebody you could hit at any point in time.
Yeah. Well, it's not. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Shane.
I was just going to say, never hurt me. Yeah.
It's not just clients either, right? It's your team.
Yeah.
Your team will actually respect you more because you can give them that same devoted time and energy and effort. Like, it's across the board. If you can do exactly this is as simple as there's a reason why there's entire companies built on just your calendar and scheduling and how to be efficient with your time and execution, right? There's books after books after books written on this. It's a simple subject, but it's a subject that actually makes a huge difference for you. So what I want you guys to do is we kind of wrap today's show and we look at, I want you to look at your own calendar. I just want you to take an honest assessment. Pull your weekly calendar up and look at it. What does it look like? This is no judgment. You're not going to come at yourself and be like, oh, I'm a piece of crap, or, oh, I'm amazing. No, just what does it look like when you look over the last 7 days? Is it chaos? Do you have an open calendar, right? Are you even using a calendar? Or does your calendar so full that you literally have scheduled tasks from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. and then you're wondering why you feel overworked and overloaded and your spouse is at home wondering if you still love them? Right? So just take an honest assessment and look at it and look at where you're at and then start to identify where you can start to implement some of the things that we're talking today. And I would just pick one. And what I'm going to encourage you, if you do not currently have reoccurring meetings with your team. Now, this team could be, guess what? If you don't have a team and you don't even have an associate, you don't have a paralegal, you don't have an admin, you don't have anything. It's just you. Well, guess what? That meeting is with yourself.
Yep.
But what I want you to do is I want you to schedule that meeting, find a time where you can start scheduling an actual consistent meeting. If you've already got that, then pick something else. I'm just giving you the first place to start. But I want you to assess your calendar, and then I want you to pick one thing that you can make a consistent, reoccurring outcome on that calendar and then do it, right? And then start to honor and start to follow through that process. The client I was just talking about that I was on that rescheduled, they are supposed to be called last night because he was in fires. This is how we started with him. And even though he doesn't have it perfect yet, we've been working on it for about a year, he's about a bajillion times better than he was. And he's literally doubled revenue over the last year in his firm. Literally doubled revenue. And there's a lot of factors to that, obviously, not just his calendar, but this is where it started because all those other things couldn't happen if he didn't get this in place. So that's the easy action item for you to do, right?
I'm going to weigh in on that on 2 issues, Trevor.
Yeah,
One,
go for it.
make sure you figure out how often that meeting has to actually take place for that subject, okay? So whatever it is, maybe you start with once a week and you realize that you're trying to come back and create fires to deal with that issue, 2 days later, then you can't do that meeting once a week, right? So next week you're going to do it twice. And if that's not enough, you're going to do it 3 times. So just look at that frequency, and if it's still popping up, schedule another meeting doing the same thing later on that week, right? Don't try to double the length of the meeting. That's probably a bad idea, right? So schedule it again the next week, but 2 this time. And if that's not enough, 3. Whatever the issue is, right? Like the first thing that came to mind for me was expense checks, right? Writing those out for your law firm. All right, try it once a week. If that doesn't work, try it twice a week. Client checks, you can do the same thing. Whatever it is, look at the frequency of that. And 2, the other thing is when you're looking at your calendar, I want you to see, does that calendar reflect your life for that day? Because just because you have a perfect calendar, what does your day-to-day look like and how close are those 2 issues? And take a moment and see, and then that's showing you're probably not honoring the calendar at all. So those are my 2 things on that issue, Trevor.
No, that's perfect. Perfect. So if you guys will do that, I promise you this will start you down the road of being able to own the calendar, and the calendar will stop looking like a crime scene, and it will start to actually be a tool that you could use to make you more productive. So if you got value from today's show or any of the shows in the series, this is episode number 7 of our series on how to break through the ceiling of scalability, how to actually scale and grow. Please share this show up with someone else who might get value. And if you haven't listened to those previous episodes, I would go back 6 episodes and start at number 1, work your way all the way up to today. But we only grow if you help us grow. So if you share this show, it's all we ask from you is so that you can help us get this message out there and help other attorneys just like you to start to get value from the content that we put out. And obviously we're following a map that built Shane Smith Law, built your firm, Shane, to where it is today and beyond, right? It's a consistent process of moving through it. So this is real world, real tactics, not bullshit or theory that we're just making up on the fly. But we appreciate
unfortunately, it's all lessons you usually learn the hard way, right? So
I know those are the best ones to learn. So hopefully you guys can learn them by us talking about them and at least implement some of the things so you don't have to go down the same road that both Shane and I have been down that is sometimes pretty tough.
Painful.
Yeah, it's a painful road for sure. So if you want to dive deeper into your personal firm, your personal situation, head over to legaledgecoaching.com where there's a short application. We find out if you're qualified to jump into a deep dive conversation with me where we will actually peel back the layers on your firm, look at your team, look at your optics, your KPIs, etc. And we will find out where the heck are you stuck, give you a 90-day action plan on how to get unstuck and what you need to actually implement and execute on. So it's something we offer up, though, for those that qualify. If you want that, again, it's legaledgecoaching.com. Other than that, we appreciate you guys and have a fantastic rest of your day.